Lock and Load. The Michael Berry Show is on the air.
It is not pandering to our guest for me to remind you, my audience, something I have said over the last year, and that is that the most intellectually consistent and principled man in public life over the last 50 years is former Congressman Ron Paul. So it is a dishonor to have him as our guest. Congressman?
Michael, it's nice to be on your show.
It's nice to be with you. I don't know if Tracy told you, but I've been begging for a 3-hour sit-down.
She was telling me about that, and I wasn't quite in the position where I could promise that, so I thought, it's better that I get 30 minutes on the show than nothing.
Congressman, I'll take 30 seconds. I really believe, I went back and was doing some prep on you today, and I was looking back at speeches you've given and comments you've made, and I say to myself, how ridiculous that you're on the floor of the House of Representatives talking about Ludwig von Mises amongst a bunch of boobs who have no clue what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know you know why I do it. But, I've thought about that, and, Mises is so important because he and other Austrians have explained the business cycle, which seems to me to be a pretty important issue on why we have booms and busts and unemployment. And I thought, how many people in the Congress have heard of his name? And you're right. There are several that do, but I don't believe I can name 5 people who actually understand the Austrian business cycle explanation. And that to me is crucial. If you don't understand that, you do all this nonsense that we get, tinkering with the tax code and the spending and let the Fed do whatever they want. And then they wonder why things don't get any better. So, I've thought about that very thing. But what I have done over the years hasn't been with the idea that I was going to give a powerful speech and convert my fellow colleagues. If I had done that, I probably would have been too frustrated to stay there, but I knew that there might be somebody else listening, and maybe a couple did.
Congressman Ron Paul, I've said numerous times throughout the presidential election and over the last few years that you don't have to vote for Ron Paul, you don't even have to like Ron Paul, but you cannot call him crazy. And I find that what's been done to you, and let's take Bill Kristol, for instance, by people like Bill Kristol, who I think I have a very cynical view of them and their motives, is they have managed with a great number of the unwashed to convince people, let's not even discuss what Ron Paul's talking about because he's crazy. And when you can do that, you can prevent an honest discussion of ideas.
Yeah. Well, if they can't refute your ideas, the saying goes that they go after your characters, so they want to attack character, therefore they don't have to refute ideas. So I would make the case that he ought to talk about the issues. If he thinks my position on monetary policy is foolish, he should try to refute them and defend paper money and Federal Reserves and endless credit and $15 trillion bailouts for foreign banks and foreign governments. He should be put on the defense. But, when he gets on TV, he's never asked those kind of questions. He gets to, criticize others.
For 40 years, Dr. Ron Paul, you've been in public life fighting the good fight, politically, intellectually consistent. You ran for president 3 times. What is the greatest accomplishment of your life, your public life, outside of being a doctor, outside of being a father, outside of being a husband? What's your greatest accomplishment to date?
Well, I haven't thought a lot about that because I think that's somebody else's job, but if I tried to come up with something, it wouldn't be, precise and dramatic, but hopefully it's just getting people to think about important issues and at least think about what I'm saying and maybe agree or maybe challenge me. But I think it's getting people to pay attention to the problems, and I think there's been a little progress on that because I've been there a long time, but it was after the financial crisis hit that the credibility seemed to improve a bit. So hopefully I got people to think about, why free markets and individual liberty are so important to both peace and prosperity, because I think that should be our goal in life, peace and prosperity, so that we can seek fulfillment in life.
Dr. Ron Paul, I have 3 minutes left in this segment. I want to give you time to answer this question as best you can in that amount of time. Reading some things about, one of the things you talk about was Nixon taking us off the gold standards and stepping away from Bretton Woods. For people who don't understand the gold standard, and for you, monetary policy, why is that important to the average person that we went off the gold standard?
Well, because it gave license to government to expand and not to be responsible. And this is a deliberate issue, because from 1913 on, the movement was away from restraint on government spending. But if governments have a vehicle where they can print money to pay the bills, they will. And they have done it endlessly. So when Nixon finally took us off the gold standard, even though we weren't on much of a gold standard in 71, but finally he closed the gold window. Foreigners weren't allowed to reclaim gold for dollars. And on August 15th of 1971, I said to myself, this is going to lead to really serious problems according to Austrian free market economics. And that is what's happened. I mean, the dollar's worth about 10 cents. It's lost 90% of its value since 1971. It's lost 98% of its value since 1913. So, and look at the spending and the deficit. If the Fed couldn't print money to buy Treasury bills, interest rates would go up, and the Congress would have no other choice than to cut back on spending. So it's a vehicle to enhance the welfare state, and it enhances the warfare state too, because there's a lot of things we do under the pretense of national defense, but it's really militarism and the things that Eisenhower warned us against. None of that would happen if the Fed couldn't print the money. The founders knew this, and that is why they put in the Constitution only silver and gold could be legal tender, because they knew what would happen. They had just gone through the runaway inflation of the continental dollar. To me, it's a very, very important issue. Hopefully, a lot more will study about it, and quite frankly, a lot of college people and young people have started reading and studying about the importance of the Federal Reserve.
You ran for president 24 years ago as a Libertarian. For the last 2 election cycles, you ran as a Republican. Are you a Republican?
Well, yeah, but I don't know what that really means. I was elected as a Republican every time I ran for Congress and worked within the Republican Party. And in many ways, what they pretend to be, I think I can qualify. They talk about limited government and balanced budgets and personal freedoms and strong national defense and honest money. So I think in that way, I may be more Republican than some of the others who get in office. Just think the Republicans didn't do all that well when we had the House and the Senate and the presidency. Spending continued, deficits exploded. So in that sense, but so I don't think the Republican Party really has a precise philosophy. I always tried. It's a vehicle, and other vehicles aren't much available to us these days, because it's very hard for third parties to get anywhere, to get on ballots or get a debate, these sort of things.
I want to talk to you about that coming up. Congressman, I have a break here.
Okay.
If you can hold with me for just a moment. Congressman Ron Paul, Dr. Ron Paul, did not endorse Mitt Romney. I'll ask why not, and are we better off because Romney lost? The future of Rand Paul, the TSA, Iran, lots more soon. Congressman Ron Paul, come.
When Chuck Norris needs advice, he tunes into The Michael Berry Show.
Chuck Norris approved.
Here's a little story I got to tell about 3 bad brothers you know so well. It started way back in history with that Rob and me.
That's Paul Revere, because we're revering Ron. Never mind. Congressman Ron Paul, you ran for president 3 times.
Right.
People who support you don't just support you. They are adamant. Sometimes they drive me crazy because they are such intense supporters. Nobody else in politics, not even Barack Obama, has the level of support that you do. And I don't mean blacks who support Obama who say, well, he's black and I'm black. I mean, they understand everything you stand for. They can repeat your platform. They can talk about ideas. I don't think there's been anybody in public life. Reagan would come the closest, since it's not even in the same realm. It may not be 51% of the people, but it is this following of people who really understand your ideas. They don't think you're pretty. They don't share your race. They don't want to be your friend. They espouse your ideas. Why can't we get that to 51%?
Well, in some ways, you don't have to worry too much about that because you concentrate on a small number of people who influence the 51%. The 51% is important. They have to endorse the government, and their endorsement will allow certain governments to exist. But you have to have people in leadership to espouse something worth believing in. So I've challenged the status quo. People, the 51% or greater, endorse the system because we've been taught to for the last 100 years, whether it's foreign policy or monetary policy or welfare system or the inflationary system. It's been endorsed. It's been taught to. Even those individuals over this last century had instincts that opposed this. They were browbeaten. The system browbeats them. The media browbeats them. The schools, the movies, and the government, till the point where you're told that you're unpatriotic and you're stupid, and therefore you don't stick to your guns. But now that this is coming unglued, I think the opportunity presents itself to allow something else to come about. And I think the young people especially are aware of the seriousness. They're more prone to believe in principle and to look for consistency. So I think the opportunity is there. I think I happen to be at the right place at the right time. But I think there's a great need for this message. It's not a Ron Paul message. It's really a message that's been around for a long time. It's a continuation of what the founders actually dealt with in our early history. And right now, I'm excited because the young people have, been attracted to these views.
And it's amazing to me what a following of young folks you've had and how passionate they are when these are ideas that typically you arrive at later in life, as Churchill alluded to. There are a number of things I want to get to. I'm trying to decide exactly. You did not endorse Romney. Why?
I didn't have enough agreement with him on his views, and I didn't want to endorse the views. I happened to have gotten along with real well, and he was probably one that I talked to and was friendly with as much as any of them, when we did our debates. But I think he understood me pretty well, and I understood him. And, when we talked about family and children and all, we did quite well. But, he didn't quite come close to what I was trying to say, on the foreign policy, didn't have a lot of interest in monetary policy and that sort of thing. So I just didn't want to endorse somebody that really wasn't going to do, I didn't think would do a whole lot to move in the direction I was trying to go.
In the long run, is the Republic better off that he lost?
Oh, I don't think better off. You could make the case for either way, and I sort of come down on it doesn't make a whole lot of difference. There's a different flavor, and I know generally how you feel and how I feel generally, and a lot of people that listen to you feel, about our current president. But the current president hasn't really changed foreign policy. He doesn't change monetary policy from the Republicans. He doesn't change the welfare system. He might be more aggressive on it, and Republicans will talk about cutting back. But the system is ingrained with interventionism, intervene in our personal lives, intervene in the economy, intervene in the affairs of other nations. And Republicans and Democrats, although they have strong rhetoric and they seem to be fighting and all, I think there are some people, I think there are some very powerful, wealthy people that are global in nature that really didn't care that much. I think their interests would be protected, with either president. So I don't think that we're better off or worse off. I think we're only going to be better off if we change the direction of our country by changing our attitude, what the role of government ought to be, and nobody seems to want to ask the precise question, what should the role of government be? This is what the founders asked, and they tried to describe what the role of government should be in the Constitution. But today, the role of government for 90% of the people in government is always, run the nanny state, have a welfare system, print the money when you need it. Deficits don't matter that much. We have an obligation to be involved in other countries, and that if we don't like somebody, we send them a drone missile over there and kill them, even if we kill a bunch of kids. and both sides have been doing that. So I just think that we have to ask that precise question: what should the role of government be?
Ron Paul is our guest. Am I hearing you say in that last answer that there's not a dime's worth of difference between the two parties?
I think on the surface they pretend to be different, but long-term policies don't change. You know, I think that you know, from my viewpoint of strict philosophy, I don't think there's a whole lot of difference. But I don't even think they pretend there'd be a lot of difference. They want to, you know, sort of meld themselves into the same thing. You know, Republicans don't want to be seen as being cold-hearted and not believe in the welfare state. You know, they have to, you know, endorse that. And if Democrats say, well, we shouldn't be fighting so many wars, then, we'll be weak on defense. So they have to show how tough they are, and they have to go start another war. So I think ultimately there's not any significant difference on the results.
Is Ron Paul is our guest. Is the threat by Iran to American security overstated?
Grossly so. I mean, it's a third world nation, and they don't have a significant army. They don't have intercontinental ballistic missiles, and they've been harassed for a long time. They haven't invaded a neighboring country in centuries. And if we're honest with ourselves, we can look and see, well, you know, why are they angry at us? Why are they annoyed with the U.S. government? Well, maybe it's because we threw their elected leader out in the 1950s and ushered in the radicalism, you know, of the Ayatollah by 1979. And then when we encouraged and supported Iraq fighting the Iranians, I mean, the Iranians say, well, why are the Americans always wanting to kill us? You know, and why are they getting involved? They don't have an army. Maybe they're 6,000 miles from us. They haven't threatened us. They don't have a nuclear weapon. Just think of the time we have spent over the concern about a nuclear weapon that doesn't exist, and yet we lived through, and I was in the military during this time, we lived through the Cold War when the Soviets had 30,000 of them, and some of them 90 miles off our shore. I mean, in comparison, I mean, we just looking for trouble, and now all we do is put sanctions on these people, try to starve them, and punish the people. And then they get angrier at us, which ruins the dissidents in Iran. Would like to get rid of their ruthless leaders, but we do all these things, and they think, well, that means they'll get mad at their leaders. No, they get mad at us, and they have to rally around their leader. So I think our foreign policy is so foolish, and Iran just does not pose a threat to us. I think it's there to stir the people up and always have an enemy out there. First it was Iraq. Remember how they built up the Iraq War? They were about to bomb us and invade us, and they had nothing. They had zero. And we were their allies for 30 years. It's this on again, off again that, you know, that is disgusting. Think of all those years we pumped these billions and billions of dollars into Egypt. Now the radicals overthrow
Ron Paul,
that government.
I have 10 seconds left. I would be remiss if I didn't say on behalf of our listeners, for folks who voted for you and those who wish they had, you are a true American patriot. I have a lot of respect for you, sir.
Thank you for having me on.
Thank you for being on.
The Michael Berry Show.